Hello there. Thank you for joining our Youth Force NOLA self-learning module. In this module, we'll take a deeper dive into one of the main components of soft skill empowerment, and that is assessment through feedback. Feedback is critical to growth. There's no doubt about it. Whether it's a baby learning to walk, an athlete learning to perform a difficult skill, or a professional figuring out how much to execute a work task, feedback is required to help that growth along. Feedback itself can come in many forms and fashions, and the quality of the feedback can also impact the speed and quality of the growth. Today, we are going to focus on a particular method of delivering feedback that we have discovered is essential to building skill development in youth. We don't have a clever name for it, but we do have a formula to follow that can help you maintain both a consistent approach and give you the strength and confidence to deliver a strong feedback conversation. Sometimes it's the getting started that is the hardest part. First, I would like to share a couple of musts. These are things that you have to pack in your lunch pail before going to work on the feedback conversation. You must use and consist of non-judgmental language. You are not judging the person, you are evaluating an action or a behavior in a non-judgmental way. Also, understanding and establishing the criteria against which the thing is measured. It is not productive to give empty not goods or great jobs. If those phrases are bound in criteria that both you and your student are aware of, then state it. For example, hey, that is a great job writing complete sentences in preparation for your discussion. That is clear feedback that identifies the criteria. And lastly, the last must that you have to pack before beginning this conversation is understanding that rapport is key. Don't be surprised if the feedback you give to a student that you just met is not received as well. After all, don't you have to trust the people who provide you feedback? So, those are some musts. Now let's dive into what the formula looks like. As a tool to help you deliver consistent and quality feedback, we're going to take a look at this feedback formula that has been developed by the team at MHA Labs. It is very helpful in developing your voice when it comes to having these difficult conversations. This tool is great to use by individuals, across content teams or grade level teams, or even as a whole school. First, we'll start with context. You should remind students of the context in which they are receiving feedback, and you must also remain factual. Set the tone for this feedback session. For example, as you are getting ready to begin your feedback conversation, here's something that you might say with regards to a writing example. Hey guys, just a reminder that when you're writing an essay, you're expected to follow certain rules, guidelines, and expectations. We discussed these when I assigned the essay, and I even provided time for clarifying questions. Today, we're going to take a look at areas that need growth or even those that have really hit the mark well. This sentence sets the tone for the conversation and supports the students by letting them know that this will not be an attack on them personally, but more an effort to improve their work. So we've just set the context. Next, we remind the students of the expectation. You can use the assignment sheet or notes from which you explain the assignment. You can even reshare or show the rubric at this point. We want to remain factual and supportive. Another example here, consisting of this writing example that I've discussed a minute ago. So, when reviewing the essay, I was specifically looking for a structure that reflected organized thoughts. Remember, that was 10% of the rubric. I have noticed your essay is not organized in any reasonable structure. When we base our feedback in facts and are supportive, then we can set the students up for growth. I have clearly identified the context and the expectation that was not met here. Next, we move to evidence. And when we move to evidence, we want to share things that we observed and hopefully we know that the other student observed as well. We also want to provide a bit of time for them to absorb the evidence, and you want to read the room to see how this is being handled by the receiver. We want this to be a productive conversation. So we've stated the expectation, now we get into the evidence. Remember, by digging into the evidence, we go straight to ensuring that this is not a personal attack. This objective look within the feedback is both rapport building and encourages the students to recognize the area of growth within the evidence themselves. It's almost like you and the student are taking a 20-foot view above the issue itself. For example, this is how a conversation could go. Let's take a look at this paragraph. You mentioned clearly 3 things that occurred, but they are not in order of importance, chronological, or any other interesting way. What do you think? So what we've done here is we've brought the evidence to light, and we've now putting it to the student for the student to give us their voice back regarding this feedback. So the next part of this feedback formula is the actual back and forth. This is where you have the conversation. So we are now specifically engaging in a conversation with the receiver, but it is founded in the context, the expectation, and the evidence. So now you're asking them to contribute. You should demonstrate positive body language and be sure that you understand right now you are providing voice at this point in the process. Voice will provide follow-through. So the question, what do you think? This is a simple question that you ask the student at this part, and it leads the next part of the formula. When we say this, we get a reciprocal conversation between you and the student, which provides a time for explanation, understanding, and reflection. This is critical in giving the student the voice and agency in his or her area of growth. This then feeds into the last component of the formula, which is suggestion. So at the suggestion stage, you will ensure that your suggestion addresses the main subject of the discussion and that you seek to close the loop on this conversation. Your suggestion should be actionable and is something that can be followed up on or checked, not something empty. And so suggestion is just as it sounds, making an opportunity for action to improve the skill or task. For example, and we'll continue with the writing scenario, one way you can correct your structure is to plan your paragraph construction ahead of time through pre-writing, or by having independent eyes peer review your work periodically. You can even read your work aloud and ask, does this sound the way I want it to? This act of providing a suggestion closes the loop on the current issue and makes this about the next steps or action needed. Let us now take a quick review of the feedback formula. Each of these steps should be followed in order and none should be skipped. These steps provide the foundation for a strong feedback cycle. They are going over the context, reviewing the expectation, showing some evidence, having the feedback conversation, and lastly, ending with a suggestion to close the loop. So that winds down our feedback module. Of course, I want to thank you for your time and listening, and I encourage you to continue through the module to participate in what we think are some pretty interesting application exercises where you get to do some role play and practice what this conversation could look like. And also check out our other self-learning modules that have to do with soft skill building practices. Thanks and have a great day.